The greatest legendary dragon-slaying sword slumbers for centuries, only to wake trapped inside the body of a morbidly obese prince who's the laughingstock of the kingdom. Imagine being the weapon that terrified the world, ending up killing a stupid prince who accidentally stabs himself with you, only for your soul to possess this flabby corpse. In this video, watch how the legendary sword 7 alters the fate of this outcast, defying the royal family to forge this weak body into an invincible monster. You'll love watching him revive the forbidden dragon slayer style to crush everyone who mocked him. But the real shock? What happens when the king realizes this failure of a prince possesses a terrifying aura unseen since the age of myths?
With great pride, the sword spoke, "I am the true maker of heroes, whose names history has immortalized. I am the spirit that inhabited their blades to perform miracles." He searched long until he found in Yara that powerful spirit worthy of his sharpness. A mighty knight could be seen carving through the ranks of monsters, tearing through their bodies as if they were butter, as the sword's voice whispered with certainty, "This is the chosen one." The sword spoke of its master. He was but a simple country boy from a remote village named Leambir, but by uniting my power with his will, we snatched away what everyone else failed to reach. Together they achieved what was considered impossible, and they authored a new reality in the books of history. The scenes shift to the towering Mount Al-Jaya, where hearts race amidst thunderous storms and lightning that splits the sky. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the foundations of the mountain, sending rocks flying in every direction. Leambir's hand appears gripping the sword with iron strength. He has managed, single-handedly, to fell an entire dragon in a breathtaking sight. But the battle is not over. The legendary dragon is still gasping its final breaths, its defiant spirit refusing to break. The dragon gathers the remnants of its energy, preparing to launch a devastating attack, capable of erasing the place and everyone in it. Leambir struggles to regain his balance, ready for the final confrontation with absolute resolution. The dragon breathes a terrifying beam from its maw, pure energy aimed at crushing everything in its path. But Leambir raises his sword, and a glowing blue aura erupts from it, flooding the area like an impenetrable shield against annihilation. A confident smile plays on the hero's face amidst the violent glow of energy. He whispers to the sword with total confidence, "Let's go, partner. The moment has arrived." He lunges like a streak of lightning towards the dragon, slicing through the air with his glowing blade in a charge that knows no retreat. With one final strike, they pierce the heart of the Teraji dragon, ending the legend of terror that had weighed upon the world's chest. After the battle, Leambir was seen sitting upon the throne of the kingdom, beside him the lethal sword that split the dragon, a scene announcing the birth of a new king. The camera pans to reveal a massive palace surrounded by greenery on all sides, like a paradise sprouted from the womb of destruction and war. The tale of the sword and the king has begun. How will Leambir rule this land? And will the sword 7 remain a mere tool, or will he claim a destiny of his own? And so the epic ended. He, the legendary sword dragon slayer, became a living icon, an inseparable part of the history of heroics. In the moments of farewell, Leambir whispered words etched into his blade. "Please, be the protector of the lineage, and watch over those who come after me." Then silence fell. Suddenly he awoke from his deep slumber in the reinforced vault to the most irritating noise. He thought to himself with resentment, "What is this racket? Have the rulers lost their dignity? This disturbance ruins my stillness." Someone was trying to pull him from his place with clumsy force, stripping him of the rest that had lasted for centuries. He opened his magical vision to see a catastrophic scene. A fat youth, bearing the marks of blind luxury, was gripping his hilt and shouting arrogantly, "From now on, I am the master of this sword." The guard's voice rose in frantic warning. "Your Highness, this sword is noble and sacred. No one has the right to touch it except His Majesty the King. Please, leave it in its place." The prince began waving him right and left in a disgusting, random fashion, while 7 screamed internally, "What is this monstrosity? Is this truly the heir of the Leonberg family?" The prince replied insolently, ignoring the guard, "Silence. There is no authority in this land that rises above my desire." 7 felt disgusted. He hoped his intuition was wrong, but the truth was far more bitter. He wanted to verify the worthiness of the one holding him, so he activated the ability analysis feature, only to be met with a shock. The system window appeared before his eyes like a slap. Adrian Leonberg, 16 years old. Talent? None. Traits? Arrogant, morbidly obese, stupid, woman chaser, lazy, and naive. Even his mana is as turbulent as chaos. In short, the family had been cursed with every possible flaw. He fell silent from the horror of the disaster, then thought with grief, "Since you are of my companion's blood, I expected a hero, but you look like a servant to your own lusts." Outside, the prince believed that possessing the sword would make everyone submit to him. Suddenly, the prince raised him high like a fool and cried out, "Oh, great sword, grant me your power." 7 screamed to himself, "Has he gone mad? Does he expect a legend like me to grant its power to someone like him?" The prince continued his hilarious shouting, insolently attempting to beg for his energy. He began thrashing around with the sword in every direction, servants rushing about in a panic. "Your Highness, calm down! Brandishing a weapon inside the palace is forbidden." The prince barked at them sharply. "Shut up! How dare you stand in my way? Do you wish to die?" In his stupidity, he thought merely holding the blade would make him invincible and that no one would dare lay a finger on him. But fate had another opinion. Because of his weight and random movements, his feet tripped and he fell heavily to the ground. In the moment of the fall, his hand lost its grip on the hilt, the sword flipped in the air, and its sharp blade pointed directly toward his belly. The blood froze in the veins of those present. There was no room to intervene. The distance was closer than any rescue attempt. The prince fell upon the blade, the screams of the maids blending with the noise of the impact. The fat prince had been stabbed by his own legendary family sword. Seven thought to himself in bewilderment as he felt the prince's blood wetting his steel. Is this possible? Did he truly stab himself? The vision around him began to fade and distort. For the first time in his history as a sword, he felt his consciousness slipping away. How could a legend like his end in such an absurd fashion? He knew the current heir, Adrian, was nothing but a walking disappointment. The throne groaned under his weight, and the kingdom under this frail family's rule had no future. He was the undisputed champion of arrogance, incompetence, and greed, a mass of laziness and violence, a dark cloud looming over the nation's future. After the sword thrust that nearly ended his life, Seven awoke in the prince's place. Whispers began to ripple through the hallways. One maid said in bewilderment, "Did you see? He no longer demands mountains of food as he used to. The prince has changed completely." Her colleague replied, "Perhaps the fear of death restored his mind," while another scoffed, "He'll return to his disgusting nature soon enough. He's just trying to protect himself for now." But in truth, Seven didn't care for such trifles. He was drowning in his own shock. I, the legendary sword, killed my companion's grandson and now inhabit his body? Yes, the sword had been incarnated within this fat boy. A servant interrupted his thoughts, trembling. "Your Highness, His Majesty the King has arrived. Prepare yourself and gather your dignity quickly." Seven muttered with resentment. "This man didn't visit me while I was wrestling with death, and now he shows up suddenly?" The maid cried out in terror. "Please, Your Highness, the palace has ears and the king is at the door. Watch your tongue." At that moment, a massive shadow and an overwhelming presence appeared behind her. He spoke with a voice like the peal of thunder. "I heard you returned from the dead, but it seems your insolence is the only thing about you that hasn't changed at all." He ordered the maid to leave immediately, while Seven asked himself in confusion, "Who in heaven's name is this man?" The man continued in a sharp tone of reproach. "The bond of mentor and disciple between us. Are you now pretending you don't know me?" Seven screamed internally in shock. What? Did this swine of a prince actually have a mentor too? He replied with forced calmness, "My memory is extremely clouded. May I know who you are?" The man was stunned and muttered, "Is it possible? Have you truly forgotten me?" Suddenly a servant shouted, "His Majesty the King has arrived." Seven realized then that the man before him was not the king, but the mentor, and now it was time for the grand meeting. The current king appeared from a distance, overflowing with majesty. Seven thought to himself, "I believe the blood of lions had vanished and turned into the blood of dogs over time, but this man's features suggest something entirely different." The king stepped forward and said coldly, "I see you do not even salute your own father. It seems surviving the grave truly changes a person's essence." The mentor turned to the king, saying, "My liege, it seems the prince's memory is unstable." The guards were shocked, and one muttered, "How? The physician told us nothing." The king ordered the physician to be brought immediately. Moments later, the doctor was examining him while he lay on the bed, everyone watching with bated breath. The physician said tensely, "Your Majesty, there is no organic defect in the prince's body. However, he may be suffering from a case of temporary amnesia resulting from the severe psychological shock of the accident." The king looked at him with piercing eyes. "Amnesia?" Seven felt a chill run across his body. "Has he figured me out this quickly?" The king continued sternly, "That is a foolish excuse, boy. Do you think forgetting the past will erase the sins and the filth you committed before the accident?" He went on in a deep tone, "A man may lose his way and commit acts for which he is blamed, but greatness lies in recognizing the mistake and not repeating it. This is what we call maturity. So have you truly matured?" The king continued coldly, "Since you have forgotten everything, we shall consider the past buried with your temporary death. I will erase all your old sins from my records, and I will not hold you accountable for them by even a quarter pound, provided you move toward the future as a real man worthy of his name." The mentor intervened to calm the king, while Seven screamed internally. His deeds must have been fiercely stenching. What on earth was this boy doing to make everyone reach this level of rage? The king departed with his imposing presence, and Seven lay in his bed thinking, what wretched luck. This prince isn't treated as a human being, but as a stain of shame that everyone wishes would vanish. He wondered bitterly, what follies did this boy commit to harvest all this hatred even from his own father? Suddenly, the queen rushed toward the bed and embraced him, weeping. "I heard what happened, apple of my eye. Do not worry. Your memory will return to you soon." She continued with anguish, "The important thing is that you are alive. My heart nearly stopped for fear of losing you. I never want to lose you." He said to himself with biting sarcasm, "Where is the handsomeness she speaks of in this swine's face? Motherhood truly makes eyes blind." The queen said with tears in her eyes, "I am happy just to see your eyes open before me once again." She took his hand and added, "Never touch those dangerous weapons again. If another misfortune befell you, I could not bear to see anything harm you." She shook her head in terror, refusing to imagine the worst, while he was screaming inside, "Your Majesty, your son truly died. I am merely a strange soul inhabiting the wreckage of his body." The queen rose and said as she bid him farewell, "I will visit you later. Rest well now." She left the room, leaving him with his thoughts. He remained alone and remembered the command of his old companion, "Take care of my lineage, Seven." And instead, he had ended up killing one of them and incarnating in his corpse. Even if the accident was unintentional, he had ended his life. Since things had come to this, he had no choice but to atone. He had to live an honorable life befitting his legend and purify this body of its sins. He decided with resolve, "I will fix what this boy ruined. It doesn't matter if the body is flabby or talentless. I will build strength from sub-zero." He thought with pride, "How many heroes did I forge in my previous life? Building this boy will not be impossible for a legendary sword like me." He said with enthusiasm, "Let's start with the basics, summoning mana and building a mana heart inside this grease-filled chest." He began with a deep breath to draw the energy from around him. He felt particles of blue mana permeating his pores, and his heart began to beat with a new rhythm. But suddenly the unexpected happened. The flow of energy stopped, and his body shook violently. He said in shock, "What is this? The mana is scattering and fleeing. Is this body completely incapable of absorbing it?" He tried a second time and a third. He focused all his will to draw the mana and regulate its paths within the mana circle, but the body resisted him fiercely. His body collapsed and he fell to the ground, gasping from exhaustion, as if he were a mountain of lead. He said in despair, "This body is a wreck. In other reincarnation stories, training is easy because the heroes know the way, but here it is different. Imagine being the greatest weapon in the world, and now you're trapped in the most helpless body that people train specifically to avoid becoming like. You know your secrets well, and you know every path that leads to supreme power. Such is the state of our hero now, the mind of a legend trapped in the body of an amateur." Seven sighed bitterly. "Oh, if only I had my original body, instead of this pathetic frame that I must forcibly stuff with mana and raw power." A knock on the door interrupted his solitude, and a maid entered, speaking cautiously. "Pardon me, Your Highness. This is a body-strengthening medicine that the Queen sent specifically for you. Its taste is extremely bitter, but its benefit to your health is great." She added pleadingly, "Please, Your Highness, consider the Queen's feelings this time and drink it." She thought to herself while trembling, "I hope he doesn't throw the hot tea in my face as he always does." But Seven surprised her. He reached out calmly and took the cup from the tray. Seven sensed the liquid with his magical eye. This medicine is saturated with mana. Without a second's hesitation, he gripped the cup and drained it in a single gulp without much of a flinch.
The maid froze in her place, stunned. He didn't scream, he didn't rage, and he didn't hurl the cup at her as he usually did. He returned the empty cup to the tray and said coldly, "We are done. You may leave now." She nodded respectfully and hurried out, barely believing what happened, while Seven said to himself, "Good, let us try summoning the energy once more." He closed his eyes and began drawing the mana into the depths of his body with intense focus. He whispered to himself, "Fortunately, the medicine is beginning to take effect. The amount is small, but enough to start the change within a single day." Suddenly, he stopped and called out to the maid in a loud voice, "Listen, bring me more of this medicine immediately." Several days passed as he persisted with the medicinal doses and grueling training. He could now be seen grasping the flows of mana surrounding him, his eyes shining with absolute determination. He smiled with the confidence of victory. Finally, the decisive moment has arrived. "I will forge my own mana heart within this body, come what may." He had had this conversation with himself countless times. Forging a mana heart for a legendary sword like him was something he could do with his eyes closed. But suddenly, a horrific pain raided him. He clutched his chest and screamed internally, "Damn it, it feels as if fire is raging within my veins." He felt as though his chest would explode from the pressure of the energy. Yes, I remember now. The process of fusing mana to form the heart is, in essence, a process of tearing the soul with pain. He resisted the urge to scream, thinking with iron resolve, "I cannot faint now. If I lose consciousness, the mana will scatter, and I will fail. I must focus with every fiber of my being." Despite the pain twisting his insides, our hero Seven maintained his razor-sharp focus. Centuries of experience could not be defeated by mere bouts of agony. He clenched his hands so tightly his knuckles turned white, and said to himself with grim resolve, "You will not slip through my fingers. I must seize this raging mass of mana before it escapes. No need to rush. The secret is in following the path that flows with the heartbeat." He began to direct it, letting it slowly permeate toward his new center. He continued pumping with patience until the very last drop of mana settled into the sea of mana residing within his depths, signaling stability. He opened his eyes, sparks flying from them, and exhaled deeply. "Very sweet. I have finally succeeded." He stood tall with a victorious smile. "I am no longer forging a mana heart for another master. I am forging it for myself. With these two hands, I shall rewrite my destiny." Suddenly, a transparent system window appeared before his eyes, bearing the message, "Mana heart successfully created." He was stunned by the promptness of the response. He contemplated the window and said, "This resembles the messages I used to send to my former masters when I was a sword. Are my powers still tethered to me even now?" The message suddenly changed to "Reconnecting with original source." A flurry of notifications followed, leaving him in awe. Most legendary authorities were unavailable, and only a few could be activated given the current body's weakness. The system informed him that the connection is unstable, but he could now see opponent qualifications if they were at his level or lower, and the third eye had been activated in a very limited capacity. He felt a slight improvement in his senses and whispered in wonder, "The limited third eye authority gives me sharper vision, and my hearing have improved. Are these the remnants of my ancient glory?" He looked out the window towards a distant tree, attempting to test his new sight. Without much effort, he felt the tree as if it had drawn closer. He saw the details of its leaves with a clarity this body had never known. The vision is much clearer now, that is certain. He strained his hearing and could clearly distinguish the voices of the maids talking in the outer hallway. But suddenly, a sharp pang struck him, and the window flickered with a warning. "Mana completely exhausted. Forced shutdown of authorities."
Seven staggered in place, gasping for breath. I see now. Very limited means the mana reservoir in this body drains in an instant. The titan-like senses I possessed as a sword have vanished. Now I can barely wring out a meager amount of magic for simple purposes. Just enough to hear behind the door or see a bit more clearly. Nothing more. I must change the situation immediately. I will change this state once I expand the mana vessel and reach a stage of peace with my energy. He suddenly raised his voice and shouted in the prince's commanding tone, "Bring food! I am hungry!" He called for the maid while thinking seriously, I must adapt to this swine body first and provide it with the energy necessary for transformation. When the queen entered and saw him requesting food with such appetite, she rejoiced and said with a tender smile, "How wonderful is your will, my son. Your appetite is proof that your health is returning." The queen said with a satisfied smile, "After drinking the medicine I sent you down to the very last drop, it seems you've finally begun to realize the value of your body. Oh, right, do you know who this is?" She pointed to a man standing with iron-like rigidity, his face covered in scars that told stories of bloody battles. Our hero Seven replied stolidly, "I do not know him." The queen sighed and turned to the man. "It seems he truly has lost his memory. So, my brother, I need you to help him and take charge of his affairs." Seven thought to himself, "You ask me who he is? It's obvious he's the queen's brother, one of the pillars of strength in the kingdom, the only one her sister believes can straighten me out with his gallantry." The uncle replied in a dry tone, "You speak as if we've lost something great. His past was never honorable." He shot Seven a scrutinizing look, while the latter thought, "From a single glance, I realize I do not please this man." The uncle spoke with absolute sternness. "Let me be clear from the start. I will not go easy on him. All I can do is attempt to reduce the mountains of flesh piled on his gut and turn him into something resembling a human being. But do not expect more than that from me. Do not raise the ceiling of your expectations." The queen replied eagerly, "Merely accepting him as your pupil is a great favor to us." Seven looked at his uncle, trying to feign innocence, but the pride of the legendary sword within him was boiling. Uncle Bale returned a gaze as sharp as a blade, filled with violence, as if telling him that hell had just opened its gates for him. And indeed, the journey of torment began. Our hero set off on his first grueling run in physical training sessions. Seven fell to the ground gasping, only for the uncle to shout over his head, "From now on, your food, your drink, even your breath, everything will be by my permission and under my command. If you want the coddling of princes, then surrender now. But if you exert every effort, then, who knows, I might change my mind and teach you part of our family's secret sword arts." Seven laughed with muffled sarcasm in his chest. "Secret arts? You say this to me? You say this to the invincible knight commander, the mentor of kings and the founders of this nation?" The uncle noticed the prince's trembling fat and suppressed rage, mocking him. "I see your flab is starting to quiver with anger. What are you going to do about it?" Seven gathered his breath and said defiantly, "Uncle, let's make a wager. Within half a year, I will force you to acknowledge me and my strength." He thought to himself, "I cannot endure this look of contempt for a single day longer. If I fail, I will do anything you command like an obedient slave. But if I succeed, you will grant me one wish of my choosing." The uncle replied with a coarse laugh, "Agreed. A little entertainment won't hurt while I polish your rusty metal." The training continued violently. Seven was running in a state of peak exhaustion, whispering to himself bitterly, "It seems I spoke with overconfidence. This cursed body refuses to respond." Seven continued to run, but his body was screaming in pain. The truth was that taming this mass of fat was far more difficult than he had anticipated. Our hero began utilizing mana, directing it toward the muscles of his legs to lighten the burden slightly. He said to himself with intense focus, "I must make the mana permeate every fold of this body's fat to force it to move exactly as I desire." Suddenly, Uncle Bale pulled up beside him, his face etched with wonder as he observed the flow of energy surrounding the prince. The uncle shouted in astonishment, "Adrian, did you just activate mana?" Seven smiled boastfully despite his exhaustion, feeling a surge of victory. He answered proudly in his mind, "Yes, I have succeeded in forging a mana heart. What takes others years, I have accomplished in mere days." But the uncle's reaction was a shock. He roared at him, "Were you actually thinking of reviving a mana heart? Is that what you were doing?" Bale continued in a rage, "Who taught you? This clearly don't realize the magnitude of the disaster you've committed against yourself. It is a lowly, extinct technique. Nowadays, it's only used by bottom-tier mercenaries." Seven froze in his tracks, shocked. "What did you say? A lowly technique?" Our hero returned to his room in the palace feeling deeply confused. "The era I have awakened in is truly strange. How could the greatest technique of the ancient ages become the dregs of mercenaries?" To understand what happened, the narrative returns to the moment of the confrontation, when Seven said, "I don't understand what you're saying." The uncle replied, "I will show you rather than explain. Seeing is believing." The uncle ordered Seven to watch closely, then began concentrating a strange energy emanating from his palms. Seven's eyes widened in awe. The mana, it's taking the shape of rings. Suddenly, the uncle attacked Seven's energy with a lightning-fast strike. In the blink of an eye, Seven's mana shattered and scattered like broken glass against the uncle's power. The uncle said coldly, "The mana chain possesses the property of destruction. It shatters the energy of a mana heart easily because it is stages more stable and consistent. Even our noble family abandoned the mana heart 100 years ago after its effectiveness withered away. No one in this age uses that primitive method." Seven could now be seen holding a book titled Fundamental Theory of the Mana Chain, his face masked in bewilderment. "Time has changed more than I imagined." The legendary sword realized that his ancient expertise required an update. The world no longer recognized the old ways. He discovered that knights in this era bind mana in the form of chains, and a knight's level is measured by the number of those interconnected chains. The ranks begin at the single chain, then double, reaching up to quadruple, with the maximum limit being 5 chains. Seven whispered as he flipped the pages. It seems it is not a trivial technique, but a complex system requiring high skill. Fine then, let us begin learning the language of this era. Seven paused at a specific word in the book, his features turning stone cold as he whispered, "This name I have certainly heard before." He recalled a memory buried deep in the past, a memory belonging to ages of which nothing remains but dust and ash. He remembered Ernest Tring firmly gripping his sword and saying, "I have come from the ends of the earth to see which of us is worthy of the title Noble of the Sword." He was a strange opponent who used unprecedented techniques, not merely sword player magic, but something deeper. The name was familiar, but what that man did was even more astonishing. Seven emerged from the whirlpool of his memories with the sunrise of the following day, prepared to face the hell of training once more. Uncle Bale approached him with his usual coldness and asked, "Did you read the books I left for you? I assume you have now grasped the gravity of your foolish choice regarding the mana heart." Our hero replied with full pride, looking his uncle straight in the eye. "I read them, but I am not sorry. I do not feel a single shred of regret for what I have forged." Uncle Bale growled sharply. "Has your stubbornness reached such a height, or have you yet to realize that your old world is ended?" Seven released a faint glow of mana between his hands and said calmly, "Mana is mana. The strength of a blade is not determined by the shape of the energy, but by the one who directs it." The uncle laughed mockingly. "The difference in levels is not just a matter of terminology. Have you heard what happened to those mercenaries who clung to the obsolete mana heart methods?" He continued ruthlessly. "Time crushed them. They became incapable of facing even the lowliest knight possessing 2 chain rings. If you see yourself different from them, then prove it. Defeat a 2-chain knight first. Only then will I consider being the support you wished for." Seven replied with a mysterious smile. "Being a support for me? I'm not sure if that offer truly tempts me. For what are your qualifications anyway to be my mentor?" A heavy silence fell over the place, and the uncle's features began to shift. The uncle spoke in a calm tone that nonetheless dripped with power. "You ask about my qualifications? Fine, I shall answer you. I am the commander of the kingdom's northern army, nicknamed the Black Spear, a name feared by borders before hearts." Suddenly, a terrifying aura exploded from his body, blanketing the area, an aura so heavy the air thickened, nearly forcing the knights outside to fall to their knees from the pressure. The captain of the guard shouted in panic, "Stand down, Count Ballhard. What are you doing? How can you release such a destructive aura in front of His Highness?" Not a single hair on the uncle was ruffled. He merely offered a mysterious smile as he watched Seven's reaction in the eye of the storm. Our hero defied the pain and looked at his uncle, saying, "Do not go back on your word then. Since you are so confident in your strength, wait and see what I shall do." After the uncle departed, Seven collapsed to the floor, gasping violently, trying to reclaim his severed breath. He sat in the corner of the room and whispered to himself bitterly, "I truly felt the touch of death. This body nearly collapses just from being in the presence of a true warrior." He remembered his uncle's mocking words. "How do you dare ask for my recognition when you possess such a frail frame? If you could defeat even a single chain knight, it would be a miraculous achievement for you." As he was drowned in his thoughts, the door to the room suddenly swung open. He found a man with the dignity of a scholar waiting for him. The man bowed, saying, "I am at your service, Your Highness." Seven replied in wonder, "The royal physician, I thank you for remembering a humble person like me." The physician answered, "Her Majesty the Queen ordered me to use healing magic to restore your body, Your Highness. Let us begin the session." The physician released a warm light from his hands, and the healing magic began to permeate Seven's exhausted muscles. But our hero suddenly stood up and pushed the physician's hand away, heading toward the door. He said sternly, "I have no need for this magic now. If all this suffering goes to waste, my body will never learn how to surpass its limits." The physician stood frozen, stunned by the prince's strange resolve, watching him in bewilderment as he left the room. Seven arrived at another hall to find a young man with carefully styled brown hair waiting for him. He was overflowing with vanity. The young man watched him mockingly while coolly eating his meal. Seven returned a similarly cold gaze, attempting to decipher the identity of this visitor. The guard whispered behind him, "It is the third prince, His Highness Jillian." Seven thought, "The third prince? One of my brothers in this desolate palace, then." The third prince said with a sneer, "I heard you ran into trouble, but you look better than I expected. What a disappointment for death." Seven replied with a provocative calmness, "And what exactly are you trying to say? Did you come here just to stir up trouble?" The third prince flared with rage, thinking, "How does this wretch in a flabby body dare speak to me in this manner?" But he restrained himself and said with a malicious smile, "I've heard very important news regarding your wager, and it seems I've come to witness your end." The third prince Jillian continued with a sickly smile, "I've heard of your wager with Count Balhard. Is it true? You truly intend to fight a second-ranked knight with that body? Since you're looking for trouble, how about I be your next opponent? Let's see if your blade possesses the same courage as your tongue." The third prince left the hall with arrogance, leaving Seven to think mockingly, "Who does this fool think he is? Is every member of the Leonberg family this stupid?" The guard commented quietly, "Do not underestimate him, Your Highness. Prince Jillian has been famous for his prowess in sword art since he was a child. He achieved a staggering feat by forming 2 rings while only 12 years old. He possesses a terrifying growth rate compared to his peers." A maid entered cautiously. "Pardon me, Your Highness. There is a matter that requires your immediate attention. A collection of official letters addressed to you personally has arrived." She handed him a stack of sealed envelopes. Seven flipped through the letters coldly, thinking, "Why have these people suddenly started caring about this prince?" The letters were from nobles and knights requesting to duel the first prince, Adrian. They wanted to exploit his weakness to make a name for themselves at his expense. He smiled mockingly. It's as if they're saying, "This is my golden opportunity to strike the prince and humiliate him legally under the name of duel." He tossed the letters aside. "It seems I've become very famous in this kingdom, but for all the wrong reasons." He called for the maid and she hurried over. "Yes, your highness?" He commanded her in a decisive tone. "Everyone who sent these challenges, record all their names without exception. I don't want a single name missing from the list." The following morning, the training began. Uncle Bale stood sternly and threw a wooden sword onto the ground in front of Seven. Seven was surprised by this rudeness, but the uncle barked, "Pick up the sword. You must realize the reality of the field now. We shall engage in actual practice to make the wager valid. I don't want to hear excuses about you not learning the basics. The sword knows no excuses." Seven bent down to pick up the wooden sword, thinking with resentment. He could have handed it to me instead of throwing it like trash. I'll teach him some manners soon enough. He thought irritably, he truly is an irritating person. But the moment he gripped the sword, a horrific pain tore through his arms. Damn it, my muscles aren't responding. It's as if they are made of lead. The uncle noticed his pain and asked dryly, "Don't tell me you used healing magic to escape yesterday's fatigue." The uncle continued without waiting for a reply. "As a knight, you were supposed to understand the simplest physical rules. Healing magic only returns torn muscles to their original state. It does not grant them strength, nor does it build the fibers necessary for combat. You've left your body as weak as it was before." The uncle sighed with boredom. "Fine, since you now realize that pain is the price of power, let the real lesson begin." The uncle said in a stern tone, "This is what I've been trying to get through your thick skull, but it seems you won't learn except by seeing. Watch closely. This is the standard royal training style used to build the foundation for the kingdom's knights." A powerful aura radiated from his body as he prepared. Suddenly his eyes flashed with a predatory sharpness, and the energy of the place shifted entirely. Bale lunged like an arrow, unleashing a barrage of strikes into the air, so fast the eye could barely track them. He moved left and right with terrifying agility, converting his body weight into immense driving force. His blade tore through the air, leaving behind haunting echoes. Seven was mesmerized, not by his uncle's strength, but something else entirely. Seven said in a low voice, "Are you telling me that this is just a basic style learned by the recruits in your army?" The uncle replied dismissively, "Yes, it's a style meant only for training because it lacks the killing edge, but it's excellent as a start. And since your talent is non-existent, this is more than you could ever dream of." Seven laughed bitterly in his mind. "It has truly been a long time, longer than I imagined, but I never expected to live to see the great dragon hunter style with which I slaughtered raging beasts being treated as a lowly training exercise for novices." The uncle continued, "This style won't be enough for you to win the wager, but it is the foundation. Once you master it, you can beg your mother to bring you a real teacher." Seven replied coldly, "I have no need for another teacher. I will not learn any other style. This swordplay you despise will be more than enough to crush everyone." The uncle flared with rage and shouted, "Do what you want then, you stubborn fool." Our hero began swinging his wooden sword in the air, thinking with sorrow about the transformation of his legendary style into mere warm-up exercises.
Despite my hatred for this reality, it is logical in the end. The Dragon Slayer style is centered on the pure will to slaughter, which is exactly what the knights of this era lack. Since they abandoned mana hearts, they have lost the insight of discernment along with it. It is impossible for them to realize the true value of what they hold in their hands. He struck the air with a powerful blow, attempting to recall the weight of a true blade in his memory. The uncle interrupted him sharply. "Stop! Using just the skill of your hands won't grant you enough power. Have you forgotten everything I told you? Think for a moment. Focus the power in the center of your body and spring from the muscles of your feet. You must distribute the mana throughout your entire body with precise balance to know how to swing the sword effectively." Seven smiled to himself. "Yes, that's right. Even though I am now in a weak body mimicking a pale version of my old style, I will teach them how the dragon roars once again." Seven gripped the hilt of his wooden sword and thought sharply. "I have sworn to myself, the Dragon Slayer style is not just some decaying legacy to be tossed into the trash. I will prove its true worth to all of you." He took off running across the courtyard into the scorching sun. A full week of relentless, non-stop toil passed. He never let the sword leave his hand. He trained until his fingers bled, then returned to focus on something even more vital. He spent his nights balancing his mana heart, forcing his body to assimilate the energy it naturally rejected. A full month of hell passed, and suddenly the system window appeared to announce a major change. The system informed him. Physical structure successfully altered. Trait morbid obesity has been downgraded to obesity. Metabolism activated due to extreme training. He became more accustomed to using his new body, and the outlines of strength began to surface from beneath layers of fat. Through constant repetition, the impact of the exercises increased significantly. The body that once resisted him was finally beginning to obey him. The trait mana sensitivity disorder faded, replaced by normal mana sensitivity. Magic was no longer a stranger to his veins. Our hero could now be seen swinging his sword with breathtaking fluidity. His body movements had become lighter and much faster than they were just last month. He raised his sword high, prepared to execute a perfect strike to showcase his evolution. He concentrated his power in his heart, and then pushed off his feet with force. The swing has become perfect. I feel the lightness. I'm closer now than ever. But suddenly, a scream shook the courtyard. Uncle Bale lunged forward and shattered the prince's sword with a lightning strike, roaring, "Don't you hear me? I told you to stop immediately!" Rain was pouring heavily from the sky. The wooden sword lay broken on the ground, and the air was thick with tension. Seven looked at his hand. It was bleeding profusely, staining the mud of the earth a deep red. Our hero asked in bewilderment, gasping for air, "Uncle, what's wrong? Why did you do that?" He looked around to discover that he had been training in the middle of a thunderstorm with lightning striking right beside him without him even noticing. The uncle shouted in terror and rage. "You fool! What kind of suicidal training is this? If that had been a real sword, the lightning would have made you a dead man by now." Seven looked at the wound on his hand with vacant eyes, completely unaware of the dangers that had surrounded him. The system window appeared. Exited deep focus state. Trait hyperfocus created due to total fusion with the sword. He whispered to himself, "If I had stayed in that state for another second, I might have truly died, but I felt the spirit of the blade." His body staggered and he lost consciousness from sheer exhaustion, but the uncle was faster. He caught him before he hit the ground. The uncle contemplated the prince's pale face and said in an unusually quiet tone, "This boy, he is truly stubborn and stupid, but he possesses a spirit the likes of which I haven't seen in a long time." The uncle's gaze had finally begun to shift.